According to Body Judge, after 100 days in office, Tinubu have performed poorly in the economy. Good morning and welcome to the Dailies on Echo Television International, where we will be keeping you updated with all that is happening, ranging from what Body Judge have to say about the 100 days of Tinubu and also where the federal government is begging Labour not to go with that warning strike. I am Sarah Elisha Dasham and I'll be doing this together with Rachel Tansey. Good morning.
Morning, Taylor.
How you doing?
I'm fine. How about you?
I'm great. Thank you so much. We're live at Facebook and on YouTube, so you can do well to join us live there. Drop your comment, drop your contribution on any of the story that is of interest to you this morning. And we will be going straight into the papers, starting with Daily Independent newspaper.
On Daily Independent, DSS alerts on plot to stage violent protests in the country. We have rights group says alarm shows PEPT arraignment has leaked. You can rather the judgment, the PEPT judgment has leaked. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 4. 100 days Tinubu performed badly in economy. A statement coming from Body Judge tells the PEPT not to announce winner but call for fresh election. You can start with this story also on the front page and continue inside the paper. The big story on the paper, subsidy removal, Labour insists on warning strike, federal government appeals for patience, says action will worsen plight of Nigerians, federal workers forum to shut down secretariat, and then we have TUC wants workers awarded salaries as palliatives. You can find more details of the big story on page 29. Solid mineral industry records 51.89% revenue increase. Sector earnings grow to 193.59 billion naira, up from 116.81 billion naira. This is a report coming from NEITI. You can find more details on page 7. Oando buys 100% AGIP assets in Nigeria. Putin says free grain exports to Africa to begin in weeks. Sanwo-Olu sends fresh cabinet nominees list including Omotoso and 10 others. You can find more details on page 6. Still on Daily Independent, tension as Atiku Obi Tinubu no fate tomorrow. Presidential election petition called to televise judgment live. At the downside of the paper, Gabon coup leader takes presidential oath, promises free elections. You can find more details on page 7, and that's all the news on Daily Independent.
All right, let's take a look at the first newspaper. Subsidy removal. No going back on today's strike coming from the NLC. Sean meeting with federal government as the minister begs Labour to suspend the plan in action. Sean meeting with federal government as minister begs Labour to suspend the plan action. He had a meeting talking about the Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong. He had a meeting and then he's actually begging them that the government will look into it. So you have to read more detail of that story inside the paper. Lagos Assembly probe 12-year-old boy missing intestine. You can find more of that story. We saw it during the weekend. And Ogun State Muslim leaders demand justice, equity, protection of religious rights. Ogun Election Tribunal, APC, INEC asks the court to dismiss Adebutu petition. You can find more of the story in the paper. The big story on the current economic hardship. Ex-Kanu Emir Sanusi indicts Buhari, absolves Tinubu. Alleges ex-president administration borrowed 30 trillion naira from the CBN, couldn't service debt. Claims I take the story again. Claims Cycrofan bought dollars at 400 naira from the Apex Bank, sold at 540 naira. Recount how inexperienced boy bought a private jet, owned mansions in Dubai, UK, selling dollars cheaply procured from the CBN under Buhari. You can find more of that story inside the paper. And for the tribunal, Atiku Obi Tinubu knows fate as appeal court rules Wednesday. Direct staff to stay at home. Tinubu not worried about tribunal judgment. meet five justices to determine the petition. So a lot of Nigerians will be hoping for that. So you do well to read more of the story in the paper. Gabon coup unacceptable, federal government insists. You can find detail in the paper. Tinubu studying the G20 invitation didn't apply to join BRICS. And also coming from Putin, he said Russia to deliver free grain to Africans soon. You can do well to find more detail of any of the story in the paper.
On Voice of Liberty, Anchor borrowers loan DSS raises alarm over planned violent protest. Presidential election petition tribunal judgment to be broadcast live. Statement coming from the appeal court. Rivers State shuts down AIT Ray Power FM. The big story on the paper, NLC shuns federal government meeting, asks banks, insurance firms, maritime workers to join two-day warning strike. The leadership of the Nigeria Labour Congress has boycotted a meeting convened yesterday by the Minister of Labour and Employment, Simon Lalong, with a view to averting the two-day warning strike already declared by the organized labor. And in Kaduna, bandits blocked Birnin Gwari Road, kidnapped over 40 in 9 days. North will work against Tinubu if PEPT orders rerun, says Ohanize. We have renewed hope projects. Contractors must sign 30 years indemnity for roads, a statement coming from Umahi. At the downside of the paper, massive corruption rocks railways ticketing system, a report. We lack capacity for e-payment, a statement coming from NRC. And that's all the news on Voice of Liberty.
On New Telegraph newspaper coming from the CBN, non-oil export earnings dropped by 11.8% to $1.72 billion in the first quarter. Oil price rises to $89 a barrel, first time in 10 months. You can find more on page 25. And on insecurity, Tinubu meets with service chiefs. You can find more of what he discussed with them on page 4 and 7. Coming from the DSS, politicians recruiting student leaders, orders for violent protests. More of that story can be found on page 2. And also we have voodoo economics, running economy for Tinubu, coming from Bode George, still on the issue of the 100 days of the president. Oil thieves desperate to regain lost ground, coming from Ijaw youths. You can find more on page 28. The big story for New Telegraph says presidential election. Tinubu, Atiku, Obi, no fate tomorrow as tribunal delivers judgment. Permit live transmission of proceedings. We are confident of a favorable judgment coming from the Labour Party. Sanwo-Olu drops work education commissioners in new nominee list. Assembly begins screening of Abayomi, Omotoshan, and 16 others. And on alleged assault, Shehu Kuti to be arraigned September 27. You can do well to find more on page 7. And on the issue of power, federal government demands $1.7 million debt from Togo and Benin Republic. And on the issue of the warning strike, banks to withdraw service for 48 hours, coming from the Labour. And Obasanjo is saying, I knew Buhari didn't understand economics, but didn't know he was so reckless. Nigeria led false life under Buhari, borrowed 30 trillion naira from the CBN, coming from the ex-emir of Kano, Sanusi. We also have a study here that says infertility treatment raises stroke risks in women. So women are encouraged to read that study on page 7. But before we move further, Rachel, I think it's important we talk about the strike. Even though, I mean, just like I said, we keep sounding like broken records because going forward, backward, 2 steps forward, 20 steps backward, and you wonder what really are we doing as a country. Of course, here Labour is saying that they are actually going on that strike, no matter what federal government is saying. You remember yesterday we saw what TUC were saying concerning this, and even on the papers they're saying salaries will be the palliative for workers. But then, just like we said, it's just beyond the civil servants what is going on presently, because everybody goes to the market, everybody uses public transport, everybody buy goods and services at a very high cost. So of course this affects everybody. But then when we're seeing that banks are meant to withdraw their services in 48 hours for that with warning strike, that is really going too far, if you ask me. Even though a lot of Nigerians have said when the strike was supposed to go on, they didn't go. When we had the issue of the cash, when it was scarce, there was no strike whatsoever. A lot of things when Labour did not talk, and then right now is when Labour want to act. And then we remember when there was a court judgment that stopped them from going on that strike, and now they are planning on going for that warning strike. So I just hope that beyond the threats of the strike, or beyond the strike itself, which is just a warning strike, something will go. Because if we are going to judge by what even body judge is saying, that the 100 days of Tinubu has been very, very bad. He has not maintained the economics, and we're seeing that people are even coming with the ex-president saying that he was bad, like the likes of the former head of state Obasanjo saying that. So quite a lot is going on when we look at Nigeria as a country. But I hope that beyond all of this charade that is going on here, we'll see more proactive measures coming from the Labour and also from the federal government to do what is expected of them to do for the citizens.
Of course, for the impact of this strike to be felt, the Labour needs to call on a lot of other people to join them on the strike. And no wonder they are also asking the banks for 2 days, and also they're on the Voice of Liberty, where they're also asking Maritime to join them and all of that. So yes, this is something that it might look like, okay, the Labour are trying to be extreme, but that's the only way the voices can be heard, because we are at a position where the government are asking them for more patience, but we are looking at a subsidy that have been removed since ending of May. We're looking at people dealing with June, July, August, and now we are in September. And of course, we know the implication of fuel subsidy removal. This is a long-term plan, an economic decision. So it means even the hardship is going to be long term. The continuous increase in the fuel pump price, we're already hearing what marketers are saying. In as much as the president have come out to say fuel pump price is not going to go high above where it is now at 600, but we are hearing marketers saying that that is not even achievable in a lot of ways, because there are many other factors in play here what is affecting the fuel pump price as it is now. And I clearly said, okay, if the president is saying for sure it won't go, are they trying to tell us that after all this increase in fuel pump price is not as a result of subsidy but just a hike, if you do have that absolute control over how much it is? So this is fuel subsidy removal is not a short-term economic policy that will just go away. This is long term. So if the Labour truly wants the government to come in, then they shouldn't give them more grace, because over 90 days is enough grace, is a long period of time for us to have started seeing pilot is rolling out by now, to have started seeing the bonuses that workers need being put out there. Is a long period of time to have seen the government taking drastic measures concerning reducing the hardship for Nigerians before we wait for the first quarter of 2024, where the government said that is when we will start seeing the impact and the result of all of these economic decisions. However, by the last quarter of this year 2023, by now, shortly we'll be stepping into the month of October. By now we should have been seeing things rolling out concerning this, so that the end of 2023 wouldn't be that difficult. And then by the time we step into 2024, the first quarter, as predicted by the presidency and other experts in economics, that yes, then we will start seeing things becoming better. So yes, the Labour have to be drastic, because over the weeks it looks like they've been giving the government long rope, and then nothing has been done. Nothing have been done majorly to help with fuel subsidy removal. So yes, if they're calling on all of these people, it's so that the impact will be felt. Let it not just be like they are the only one. And it always feels like whenever they go out for a protest, it feels like the impact is not much out there. So if this is Labour's way of making the government be on their toes, because they haven't been so far, then let them do the needful. However, we should have a government that we don't have to wait that something like this happens before you do the needful. You have told us that you know what Nigerians are going through, then you should prove to us that you actually do feel the pains we are going through.
Well, you spoke very well, Rachel, and I hope that the government will actually see that from this point of view, because a lot is going through my mind. The fact that school will be resuming,
Yes.
fee is very high
High.
right now, tuition fee in tertiary institution has been increased, so quite a lot of things actually have really skyrocketed. So it's expected that the government should understand, but sometimes Nigerians will say, how do you expect the government to understand when their words are not even schooling in the country, so they do not even understand how things are working in the country. Basically, they don't even patronize a lot of things that are even in Nigeria as it is presently. Russia promising us food will be coming into the country. And if you ask me, Nigeria don't even need this food if only we do what is expected to be done. But let's just keep our fingers crossed and see, and hoping that the warning strike will actually draw the needed attention that Labour need at this point in time. And I think that it's on a new Telegraph newspaper.
On the Nation newspaper, tolling of Fed highways to go on sales. A statement coming from Mahi. You can find more details of his statement on page 29. Owando acquires NAOC's upstream oil assets. Sanwo-Olu drops 5 in new nominee list to Assembly. More insights into Tinubu's 100 days in office. You can find more details on page 3, 4, and 22. Tribunal verdict on poll, Tinubu will be confident. Court OK's live telecast of judgment tomorrow. Oyetola demands report on dilapidated port facilities. The big story on the paper, federal government TUC strike over subsidy payments not needed now. The writer under the story, NLC pushes ahead chance meeting with minister, wage award plan ready in 2 weeks. Presidency cautions against mixing labor matters with politics. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 25. DSS warns plotters of violence. At the downside of the paper, CBN loan most expensive to service. President meets defense chiefs. You can find more details on page 2, and that's all the news on the Nation newspaper.
On Nigerian News Direct, Fidelity record PBT of 76.3 billion naira for the first half of 2023. And on the blue economy, Oyetola inspect ports in Lagos, issues to make impact. You can find that on page 13. Separate Energy crosses 1 trillion naira in market capitalization. You can find that also on page 15. The big story for Nigerian News Direct says presidential election controversies persist as tribunal decide Tinubu, Atiku and Obi's fate Wednesday. NLC shunned federal government meeting to proceed on strike. Politicians mobilizing student, ethnic groups and others for protests coming from DSS, and it's an allegation you can find on page 3. We also have the GAC meeting yield result as Lagos Assembly commences screening of Sanwo-Olu Commissioner nominees today. More can be found on page 2. Lagos Blue Rail takes off with 800 passengers on maiden trip. You can find on page 12. And outside we have man 63 arrested for raping 2 minors in Plateau community. There's a sad one. You can find more of that human angle story inside the paper. We have a picture story showing the governor of Lagos State, Sanwo-Olu, during the Lagos Blue Rail taking off with about 800 passengers. You can do well to find more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On the Daily Times, how demand in banking stocks others propelled market cap to 37.37 trillion naira. The big story, fuel subsidy removal strike, federal government begs NLC. Strike will hold NLC president vows. On February 25th, poll tomorrow is judgment day for Tinubu, Atiku, Obi and OJ. Nigerians wait with bated breath. Anxiety in candidates' camp. Still on the paper, 32 kidnappers suspected armed bandits nabbed by Adamawa. You can find that details on page 2. Wiki frowns at 85 billion naira agreement for Wasa housing project. Ex-militants threaten Tampolo, asks federal government to split contracts. DSS frees Ogun local government chairman. You can find more details on page 9, and that's all the news on the Daily Times newspaper.
On Daily Sun newspaper, Labour shun federal government talk insists on strike. You can find on page 29. The big story as tribunal fixed judgment date. DSS raises security alarm. Proceeding to be broadcast live tomorrow. Only rerun can rectify INEC's error, coming from Bode George. We expect justice in line with the law, says the PDP and the Labour Party. We have uncovered plot to mobilize youth for violent protests, says intelligence agency. And I think it's important the DSS take this very seriously. Of course, a lot of hearts are beating, a lot of expectation, a lot of fear, and all of that. So, because finally, the long from the February 25th election, finally we get to know who actually won. And I keep saying this repeatedly, Richard, the fact that I'm looking forward to a country where the court do not have to determine for a whole nation who actually won the election. We're talking about a population of over 200 million. And if you should check the population of people that went there, Rachel, you agree with me that there was a large turnout. A lot of people came out expecting that my vote will count, my vote must count. A lot of people stood there till 12, 1 a.m. the next day, making sure that every ballot paper was being counted right before them. Of course, Nigerians had their own disappointment coming from what happened with the irregularities. We saw even a pinch of violence here and there during the presidential election, even though during the governorship there was a lot of violence took place during the governorship, but during the presidential election, not really that much. But then we saw that it's either the IRF wasn't working as Nigerians expected it to be, and a lot of Nigerians were disappointed. And even when the result was being announced by INEC, people, expressed their grievances with the fact that this was not what we actually voted for. And we're seeing PDP saying that we won, Labour Party saying we won, and then you ask, of course, everybody's going to say that the election is to their own favor. And now my concern is the fact that people are planning to mobilize youths, to mobilize students to actually go and stage a lot of havoc. I just hope that the DSS will do the needed, because we've even seen, just for simple tribunal, even in the state level, we see where, even though it's not physical attack, but we see, you go on social media, you see a lot of insults, abuse is coming from supporters of this party. And one thing I keep telling people is the fact that do not get dirty in these politicians, fight. Because one thing is for sure is that they make it appear that they are against one another for you to see, but believe you me, you do not know what happened behind. I mean, we've seen the likes of people that have come out to say that, God forbid, I'm not going to join that party, I'm not going to do this, that party is more like cancer, going to die. We're seeing them working with the same party. So do not get involved in these politicians' dirty games, because eventually you will get hurt, and your parents are the one that will be left to actually either take care of you if you are alive at the end of the day. So my advice to you at this point in time and to Nigerians is remain calm. I'm happy that the tribunal will be televised on TV, so you don't even need to go anywhere. You'll be at home. If you are not opportune to have a TV set, maybe in your place of work, you have a radio set, however it's going to be, I believe that you will get to hear about this. You have the papers and all of that. So Nigerians should try to be safe. Do not get dirty in any of this fight. Just watch it. If there's going to be a rerun, fine. If not, just remain peaceful, and then let's see what we can do as Nigerians to make sure that we keep Nigeria peaceful. Because being a patriotic citizen is not about a party. It's about what you give for your country to make sure that your country becomes better. So our fingers are crossed, and we'll promise to bring you updated with all that is going to happen during the tribunal. So do not get dirty in the fight.
Of course, whoever you are, don't allow yourself to be used as an agent of violence. Don't put yourself in that position. That's what it means to be a patriotic Nigerian. As you said, it's about what is good for Nigeria. In as much as we are hoping that the tribunal will give a verdict that is good for Nigeria and what will make the people
be happy, be it we have a rerun, be it that is a certain candidate that is being declared as a winner. Whatever it is, don't be a partaker of destroying the country. It takes out your patriotism and it just makes you another power drunk person, just as whatever these politicians will do, whatever it takes to get to that position, it doesn't differentiate. You're just probably poor and they have the money, and that's just the difference between the two of you. So just put in that whatever it is, let every outcome be that we want Nigeria to be better, and it is important for our security and agencies to be out there and make sure that there is no violence whatsoever. And even when there is some sort of violence, they should be able to know how to handle civilians also, because we've seen over the years that even our security officers don't know how to handle civilians. When you are using weapons at people who are not armed, then you are clearly showing the whole world that you do not know your job, you are not qualified to be in this position. So I just hope that the needful is being done, and the good news is that, well, they refuse to televise the process in the court, but however the judgment is going to be live. So yes, we'll wait and see how things unfold, but it is some good news that everybody gets to hear what is the judgment. You don't have to wait for anybody to tell you, but you can be able to stream live and see exactly what it is. But above all, just as we are seeing these candidates putting their faith on the justice system of this country, every other Nigerian should do the same, that whatever be the outcome, whatever is the judgment, that truly our justice system didn't fail us, that we had judges that did the right thing, we had jury that did the right thing, and that their verdict, we should be able to accept it as Nigerians, even if it doesn't favor us, because of course we are not all on the same page. We have our different candidate. Even if it doesn't favor us, we should be able to accept the verdict coming from the tribunal.
Well, Richard, just like you said, it's just my desire that the court will do the right thing, because they are the last hope of the common man. Because that is all the common man right now is just hoping that they will just serve justice. We just hope that they will do the right thing. So our prayers are with the judge, and then we hope that they will do the right thing. Let me round up the Daily Sun paper. We still have some few caption of stories here. We have Nigeria generated 1.49 trillion naira from VAT in 6 months. Revenue up by 25% from the first half of 2022, coming from the MBS. 15 killed, 6 injured in auto crash, flood in Kogi and Kebbi. And then we have Makodi submerged after 12-hour downpour. You can find on page 4. Sanwo-Olu summits fresh commissioner nominees. You can find on page 27. Also, we have Tribunal affirm Ashumode election. You can find more of that on page 26. OT convoy in auto crash, governor suspend driver. You can find that also on page 5. Embrace farming as solution to subsidy removal. You want to know who said that? Do well to grab more of that story on page 26. And I hope that as they are encouraging Nigerians to embrace farming, we hope that all that is needed. We are not talking about human power again. I hope we're talking about mechanized farming here, because if you're talking about mechanized farming, it goes beyond just telling people to go to farm. That is to say that every state will be provided with the tractors they need, provided with the machines they need. We'll see that the seedings that are needed, we'll see that we take care of the flooding, the downpour we've been seeing in various states. Quite a lot will go into, so it's just beyond the words go into farming. But what are you hoping to do to support farmers or youth that are planning to go on farm? Because if you're traveling, Rachel, from the various states, you realize that we have quite a number of vast land that are unused, and they are really, really very fertile lands. So I hope that this is where we'll see that the state government will provide lands. We'll see the federal government will do what is expected, giving loan and seats and all of that, and then we'll see that things will work as they should be. So our fingers are crossed to see how or what it means to embrace farming as a solution. And that's on page 26, and also how far we can go on this half. We'd love to take a break at this moment so we can open the phone lines, hear what your thoughts are concerning any of the story, and when we come back, we'll continue with the conversation. Please stay tuned with us.
Make your everyday informative, make your everyday count. Know your world, daily affairs, national and international, with authentic news events as they unfold on Global News and Zuma Nigeria, Monday to Friday at 1 p.m.
Welcome back. If you're just tuning in, the program is The Dailies on Equa Television International, your winning station. We have been keeping you updated with all that is happening. We've seen that finally the tribunal will be giving its judgment tomorrow, and they have promised that they will be televising it on TV for everybody to see the judgment. Also, NLC saying they are going on that strike, the warning strike, seeing the fact that they are calling on other sectors to also join, so the government will know that they are serious with their demand. Why? Quite a number of stories on the paper. So the number is displayed on your screen. Do well to call us. Remember to turn down the volume of your TV set. Try and summarize your point in a minute, and please make your contribution relevant to what we are talking about on the paper. I still have Rachel Tenze with me in the studio. Thanks so much, Rachel. All right, I think we'll be moving on to the next paper.
On Nigerian Tribune, politicians plotting to stage violent protests nationwide. Warning coming from DSS. Tinubu meets security chiefs before India trip. Nigeria's economy was put in a mess under Buhari. A statement coming from Sanusi Lamido. Live telecast as court decides Tinubu Atiku Obi's fate tomorrow. Entry into courtroom strictly on accreditation. You can start with the details on the front page and continue on page 15. The big story: banks, aviation, other union to join strike. TUC opts out of strike. NLC shuns parley with federal government. Federal government meets TUC, gives 2 weeks deadline for wage award. Civil service payroll bills scares me. A statement coming from Tinubu. How Bajabiamila became Tinubu's COS, the statement coming from a source which is Chief of Staff. You can find more details on page 16. And on Ekiti Airport, PCC takes up farmers, agitators over unpaid 429 million naira compensation. More details can be found on page 26. We have a picture story: 800 passengers on board as Sanwo-Olu inaugurates commercial operations of Lagos Blue Rail. And that's all the news on Nigerian Tribune.
All right, let's take a look at what the Punch have for us. The big story: presidential poll petition. Military police warn protesters as tribunal delivers verdict Wednesday. Military police vow to prevent violence. Tribunal proceeding for live telecast. Court orders workers to stay away. PDP Labour Party confident. APC promises to obey the ruling. You can find more detail on page 2. And on subsidy paying, Labour vows to ground economy begins strike. Maritime bank workers, CSO plan rally. Federal government begs the NLC to shelve strike. More can be found on page 11. Reps summon 6 MDAs over federal government asset sale. You can find more inside the paper. 40 years after Buhari's suspension, Lagos Light Rail begins operations. We can see the picture showing the governor of Lagos State, the Chinese that were involved, and other people who actually boarded the train. Coming from the CBN, foreign investors repatriated $5 billion dividend. You can find on page 21. 4 suspended suspects arrested for torturing trainee internet fraudsters. You can find on page 4 and 5. And over 1,000 lawmakers appointees get diplomatic passports. You can find on page 14, and that is all on the front page of the Punch newspaper.
On this day newspaper, one is set to take over Agip's oil, gas, power assets in Nigeria. Deal awaits regulatory approval, aiming to focus on offshore business in Nigeria. On subsidy, NLC shuns federal government peace talk insists on strike. Tribunal delivers judgment in Atiku Obi's petition against Tinubu tomorrow. The big story on the paper, how Buhari mismanaged Nigeria's economy in 8 years. Statement coming from Sanusi says inexperienced rookie bought private jet on the ex-president. 2023 budget, federal government posts 4.6 trillion naira half-year revenue. More details can be found on page 5. We have a picture story showing inclusive governance, and that's all the news on this day newspaper.
Alright, let's take a close look at what the Guardian newspaper have for us, starting with Tinubu's burden of resettling Nigeria in 100 days. We have quite a number of things that is being captured here. We have first subsidy removal. We have foreign exchange liberalization. We have appointment of service chiefs. We have Emifele's arrest and persecution. We have EFCC boss removal. We have the student loan scheme. We have dissolution of MD8 boards. We have appointments of ministers. We have Niger crisis. We have the worsened forex crisis. We have rising poverty. We have rising inflation. We have a high fuel price. We have bloating cabinets. We also have spike in living costs, and we have a shrinking household incomes. Now, all of these are burdens on what the president actually did and also what he met. And quite a very, big one, where we are having bold reforms leave Nigerians more miserable amid assurances. And you begin to ask, what assurance do Nigerians have with all of this? On one hand, you are having one is just like there was a way you made it, like giving with one hand and collecting with the other hand. Especially, let's take a look at the student loan. That is close to my heart because school is resuming, Rachel, and the loan is meant to roll from this month. So a lot of Nigerians in tertiary institutions are meant to have access to this loan.
Yeah.
But now the concern is we've seen that the reps is even pushing for 3% interest. Some of even looking at the criteria you have to meet as a student to have access to this loan is the fact that some of the students might not be able to meet. So you are being saddled with the responsibility of being so many things, and then you still have to take care of your feeding. I remember when the NAS president himself came out to say that, how about the feeding? How about the transportation of this student? Is it going to be captured? And then why is it that we're not even having other bodies? Because the Polytechnic Union is not being part of the people that are to roll out this. We only have the University Union that's only there, not even ASU. So quite a lot of things are, being under this burden, and then no one that we see Bode George is saying that maybe the president didn't take the right moves looking at the economy. But then let's just give him the benefit of that, even though it's meant your 100 days is supposed to tell what you are meant to do for the entire 4 years that you have. But then quite a lot of things under here. If you look at this, and that was why I said people should take a closer look at all of this and see what can we do. Because of course it's not just about the president, but he has ministers, he has cabinet members that are meant to help him accomplish this. And he kept making emphasis to the 8-point, talking about removal of, apart from the first subsidy, looking at food security, poverty, corruption, and then many other things that we have to look into. Now we even see one of the papers saying embrace farming as a solution to the subsidy removal. So quite a lot when it comes to all of this. So our fingers are crossed, but we hope that the government know what they are doing, and then they will put in the right measures to make sure that Nigerians are not at the receiving end. Because if you are looking at measuring certain MDAs, then we should see that even when we are looking at the cost of governance, let there be a reduction in some of the payments and all of this that is being done to other leaders, and then it will be given to the commoners so that they will be able to remain and serve the government as they should.
Of course, Stella, when you want to reset anything, it's not an easy job. Talk more of an economy like that of ours here in this country. So yes, what matters the most from you when you are trying to do something this drastic is what you're doing in between. And I believe that this is where Tinubu's administration is failing Nigerians. Not that we cannot be patient to wait and see what these economic policies bring to us or what they do to the economy of the country.
Good
However, our
morning.
concern.
All right, good morning. Hello, good morning.
Yes, good morning. Yeah.
Morning, sir. Please go ahead with your
Looking at what is
contribution.
happening in this country today, the government is about 100 years, 100 days in office, and I don't think there is anything to show for the 100 days in office. If the government was actually, the administration was actually prepared before coming on board, by now 100 days would have seen so many things on ground. The day the president said there was nothing like subsidy, he would have started working on the refineries. 100 days after, we would have seen the effect of what he has done with that refinery. But today, the 100 days is worse than the 8 years of the previous administration. We are all complaining about the policies of the last CBN governor. He has been arrested, kept in detention, going to court on daily basis. There's nothing to show for it. But today, what we are passing through is worse than that cashless policy. We are seeing cash at hand, but you cannot buy anything. Workers are complaining, housewives are complaining, non-workers are complaining. You see, you can see the economy has been bastardized. The so-called cabinet ministers, we don't know what they are up to today because they are all greenhorns. They are going about trying to find out where the problems are before they will settle down. Give them another 6 months. That will be about 9 months. Nothing will be achieved in 1 year. And you are telling us we are prepared to govern. In this country, we have been saying this, that if the refineries, since the subsidy is no more, if the refineries are not working, my dear sister, there is nothing we can achieve. What is the palliative we are giving to people? You give me 5,000. For how many days will 5,000 survive me? It's like when they were campaigning, they give these women, these boys on the street, 500 naira. Is it up to a meal? Is it up to a plate of rice by Madam Buka on the roadside? This is what they are trying to do. Now the palliatives are giving it to state governors. State governors have their candidates. They have their loyalists. They have those who voted for them. They know where they are going to distribute those so-called palliatives you gave to state. My sisters, we are facing a very difficult situation in Nigeria, and it's only God, if man cannot help us, only God will help us. And I'm looking at the revolution. The revolution will start very soon. We can't run away from it. Nobody is saying it will be cool, but you like the end starts just a child play. When this starts, the people will run away from this country. Those people that are hiding all these things, that are causing confusion, they will run away. That is why they don't want justice. We are looking towards the tribunal tomorrow. Let us see what will happen. God will judge everybody in this country. Thank you very much, my sister.
All right, thank you so much, sir, for your contribution. Well,
Yes,
you've said it all.
Exactly, you've said it all, and it's just one of the things. That's why I said it's not about the policies, the things you do in between. And we've had Nigerians saying that we don't even want the stipends for palliative, and we have our callers saying the same thing today. We've had Nigerians saying that previously. How about you do the needful thing? How about we see our refineries running? How about we see this money that is being saved, that have amounted to trillions by now, being channeled into what subsequently we will smile, and every single Nigerian will benefit from it, because whether we like it or not every Nigerian will benefit from palliatives. But by the time we have our refineries running and we begin to refine our oils here, and then we now start seeing the fuel pump price going down, every single Nigerian will be able to benefit from a better standard of living. So we just hope that the government does the needful in regarding subsidy removal and easing the hardship. Take those bold, drastic steps. I mean, Nigerians have already put their mind psychologically, prepare themselves that, you know what, subsidy is not going anytime soon. Inflation is still going to keep going high. The standard of living might keep depreciating. But our hope is that in all of this economic chaos, that we will eventually smile. But when you see the government not taking steps that will guarantee that smile in the future, then that is where our concern lies.
Oh, quite a lot coming from everybody, but we
Yeah.
hope that the government will actually take every of this, point to heart and also do the relevant things that are needed. Still on the Guardian newspaper, Gabon coup leader General Aguma sworn in as interim president. You can find that on page 2 of the paper. Apprehension as Labour begins warning strike. Court rules on presidential election. More can be found on page 6. Tinubu not to blame. Buhari plunge economy into crisis, says Sanusi. Also, Wandu acquires Agrib Nigerian oil asset. You can find that also on page 2. Policeman nab colleagues for adoption and extortion in Rivers. We're happy to have policemen that have chosen to be clean and also to serve their country with all their heart. You can do well to find more of detail of that story on page 8, and that is all on the Guardian newspaper.
On Blueprint newspaper, Gabon military leader sworn in vows free polls and amnesty for dissenters. Nigeria's flag designer Akinkunmi was iconic, a statement coming from the federal government. UK granted 132,000 visas to Nigerians in first half of 2023, a statement coming from the envoy. How Gbajabiamila emerged Tinubu's choice as chief of staff. You can find more details on page 16. As Tinubu Atiku Obi no fade Wednesday, DSS raises the alarm. Federal government begs Labour on warning strike. Some politicians mobilizing student leaders, others to cause chaos. A statement coming from Funaya. Lalong pleads NLC shuns meeting TUC differs. Live telecast of PEPT judgment allowed. Statement coming from registrar. NUBIFIE directs banks and other financial institutions to shut down. More details can be found on pages 5, 7, and 22. Still on Blueprint newspaper, Kaduna to recruit 89 doctors as governor approves new salary. GTCO increases first half post-tax profit to 327.4 billion naira. First subsidy removal has complicated our business, a statement coming from Ibman. CBN owes 30 trillion naira, debt servicing surpasses 100%. Statement coming from Sanusi says Apex Bank printed naira without restraint for 8 years. More details can be found on page 6, and that's all the news on Blueprint newspaper.
On the Vanguard newspaper, presidential poll Tinubu Atiku no fate tomorrow, and on strike and presidential poll Vandi, DSS raises alarm over violent protests. Well, we hope something will be done about that. Also, still on the Vanguard, we have Bola Tinubu, a president in need of help. You want to know what that means? You do well to read on page 11 to 13 of the paper. And ministerial tour of Nigerian ports. We can see the ministers going round to see what needs to be done and what needs to be addressed. NLC shun meeting with federal government, start 2-day warning strike. Accuses Lalong of industrial dictatorship and blackmail. Strike will worsen the plight of Nigerians, coming from the federal government. Say we waited on NLC for negotiation, all to no avail. At no formal communication from Labour on strike. Baptist Convention warned NLC against hijack by hoodlums. Asks the federal government to hasten palliative. Rethink your stance on warning strike. 100 civil society tells the Labour. Well, it seems people are actually having a different stand. Even the Trade Union Congress is having a different stand on that. Well, we hope that this will not be hijacked. That is a problem, because tomorrow we are having the tribunal giving us their judgment. The same tomorrow is when the Labour strike is supposed to start, when there will be protests. So it seems to be mixed reaction. Well, we hope that they will be able to manage this properly, and then at the end of the day, the aim will not be defeated while they want to go on strike. Still on the Vanguard newspaper, Obasanjo Sanusi blasts Buhari over reckless spending. And then sources are saying why Tinubu appointed Bajabiamila as chief of staff. You can find on page 25. We're having a picture story showing us the Lagos blue rail line that kicks off, and then we're having on sports on page 31. You can grab the Vanguard and read more detail of any of the story that is of interest to you.
On leadership, why Nigeria's refineries will never work, a statement coming from Obasanjo. Blame Buhari for current economic crisis, not Tinubu, a statement from Sanusi. We have trending federal government makes effort to stop NLC strike. And on numbers, Nigeria's money supply rises by 17%. Both stories can be found on page 2. HSBC Barclays order to close UK branches this week. And on presidential polls, anxiety ahead of tribunal judgment tomorrow. The big story, hardship. Labour shuns federal government, begins warning strike over delayed palliatives. Aviation workers pull out as union vow to shut banks and others. Address root causes of their grievances, Falana tells federal government. Reps postpone job racketeering probe over strike. You can find more details on page 4. First time in 10 months, oil price rises to $89 per barrel. Anchor borrowers loan, DSS uncovers plot to stage violent protest. Owando targets growth with any acquisition deal. You can find more details on page 16, and that's all the news on Leadership newspaper.
Well, I'm afraid that's how far we can go, Rachel. Thank you so much.
You're
for
welcome,
doing this
Sally.
with me. Thank you to our caller who called in this morning. Thank you for your positive input on the program. Thank you to our crew members, our supporters, and every other person out there that have made this program a success. Until we come your way again, do have a better day ahead.